I'm Jeevan, and I'm going to talk about our research question for the MOOC group. At the beginning of the process, all of us had a general interest in the effects of the pandemic on college students, and through doing general individualized research, we narrowed it down to U of O students in regards to study habits changing because of online learning. Through research, we found that since 2019, there's been an 8% drop in fall enrollment for incoming freshmen at colleges. We found evidence of a lack of motivation and excitement to experience college and everything it has to offer. We were curious if those seeking higher education tend to be more motivated and successful when their educational experience is aided by outside factors like in-person learning and lectures, active engagement with other students in class, and the ability to participate in activities outside of school with other students. All of this led us to the research question: how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the college study habits of University of Oregon students and the transition from in-person to online learning?
Hi, I'm Paige, and I'm going to talk about the methodology section. So first we made a Google Doc and we all put our questions of what we wanted to ask, and then through that we looked over them again to make sure there were the questions that we wanted to submit, instead of having questions that people might not want to answer or feel uncomfortable answering. And then from that Google Doc, we made a Google form and input all the questions, and then once again we looked it over again just to make sure those were the final questions that we wanted to ask people. So then from there we posted on our social media asking people to take the survey, and we got a total of 65 responses, and from there we just elaborated on the questions and the answers and responses that we got.
Hi, my name is Thomas, part of MU Group, and my job in this presentation was to discuss our findings. In this survey, the questions were ordered in a way that was beneficial not only to us, but to our subjects, to make it easier for them to respond to. Our first question we started off with was, has paying for college become more or less of a stressor during the pandemic? This was just kind of get an understanding of how people are doing payment-wise throughout the pandemic. We knew it was harder to obtain money and get a job, which would make it more so harder to pay for college, which can add stress, which can reduce study habits, because stress and study habits have shown to be negatively correlated. During that first question of more or less of a stressor for paying, we found that a lot of students were saying it was more stressful to pay for college because it was harder to find a job, and sometimes, in some cases, their parents were laid off, meaning that if parents were paying for college, it was harder to pay for that one, which was really interesting to find out. Our second important question was difficulty accessing technology. Through the pandemic, since everything was online, it was very common for studying to be on Quizlet online, or just the professors to post online Zoom lectures. So we asked, did you have difficulty accessing technology? And it was pretty apparent that in the area we live in Eugene, majority of people did not have a problem accessing technology, which is good to hear, with majority of 35% saying that they disagreed, and then 33% saying they strongly disagreed. So, the second question we asked was, I prefer Zoom lectures over in-person lectures. This is one we really wanted to find out because personally, from talking to people around Eugene, we know that it's very common that people are not a fan of Zoom lectures and they prefer to go back to in-person. So asking this one, the answers we got were pretty similar to what we thought they were, with 50% saying they strongly agreed and wish that we'd go back in person. Personally, I agree with that. I cannot wait to go back in person. Our last important question was, did the pandemic contribute to your status as a procrastinator or non-procrastinator? We really wanted to ask this question because procrastination is one of the most dangerous things during the pandemic, because a lot of professors were making soft deadlines, giving take-home tests, or making the finals optional, which really made study habits either gone or less needed because of the ease of classes so far. And the responses we got were pretty surprising, actually, with 70% of our 65 responses saying that the pandemic contributed to their status as a procrastinator, which is pretty shocking. Personally, for me, I know that I became more of a procrastinator, and I was curious to see if a lot of the students around me were feeling the same way, and it's interesting to see that they are.
Hi, I'm Megan. The limitations of our study were that firstly, we were only able to study students at the University of Oregon, which means that our findings can't be generalized to colleges across the country. Another limitation was that we used snowball sampling. While this got us enough participants to take our survey, it meant that our sample wasn't completely randomized. Also, more than half of the sample identified as male, which isn't reflective of the general population, since the general population is more than half female. Another issue was there wasn't a lot of previous research that related to what we were studying, so it was difficult to compare our current results to previous findings. And finally, it is possible that any issues that arose from our study could be due to the minimal amount of time that we had to come up with a methodology and to collect our data. And due to these limitations, it would be important for future researchers to replicate this study in other university settings across the country. They should use randomized sampling strategies in order to eliminate any biases that would come from snowball sampling. We should allow for more time for data collection in order to account for just having no misrepresentations. And finally, future research should look for other aspects that may be impacting study habits of college students, such as socioeconomic status or family dynamics, or just other mental health issues.
I am Kaylee, and for my portion, I'm doing advice for future scholars. It's now more important than ever to be more equipped for unfortunate circumstances like COVID, forcing people to go online. Education is a fundamental part of society, and initiatives to mitigate student stressors in an online environment must be accessible and ready to implement for students. When getting more data regarding the situation, it's important to look into what specific school is facing the issue and make sure the data collected is pertaining to the school, not some other school across the country, because student bodies can be very different. Also, it's important to note that some students thrive in an online environment and some also do not.